Everyone, my name is Ben Plucinski, and today I'm giving my presentation on the meat industry and its environmental impact. So without further ado, here's my presentation: to save the world, eat less meat. So first I'm going to start by talking about what it is that we like about meat. And a big reason for that is the protein content. As humans have evolved over time and started venturing from plants and nuts as our primary intake of food, our brains developed to become more keen towards sources of protein like animals, just due to the concentration of protein within the animal. Another big reason for that is vitamin B12. Meat is a huge source of this, where no plant-based substitute has as much vitamin B12 as your average meat does. Last but most importantly, in my opinion, is the taste. Nothing tastes like meat does. And a very large reason for that is heme iron. Heme iron is only found in animal products, animal meat and protein specifically, and it varies greatly from the iron found in plants because it has that added component called heme, which makes it much more readily available to be absorbed into our body. And that's a very key component in what makes meat taste so good. So for the current consumption and the environmental impact, as you can see in this chart, the darker countries are the highest meat consumers. And if you look around, you'll see that the developed countries consume the most meat globally. And over time in these countries, our consumption has actually plateaued, but it's the developing countries that are continuing to increase their meat consumption as the average wealth of the country goes up and they're more able to eat like we do in developed nations. So this is kind of a staggering amount in my opinion. Each year there are 75 billion animals killed for human consumption. That's 24,000 every 10 seconds. So that's quite a few since this presentation has started. Globally, there are 335 millions of tons consumed in 2018, and that number is only expected to go up as developing countries continue to develop. And the global meat consumption is projected to hit 455 million tons by 2050. This is another fact that I've found to be slightly staggering, is that 75% of all antibiotics in the US go to treating farm animals rather than humans. And the reason for that is because the animals are kept in such close proximity that antibiotics are the only thing that keeps them from getting sick and wiping out entire livestock herds. And also 60 to 70% of the global freshwater usage goes to agriculture, and that mainly goes to growing the feed for the animals for us to consume. Whereas if we had skipped the animal step and consumed solely the grains and stuff that we used to feed them, we would have more than enough food to feed everyone on the planet. It's an extremely inefficient way of getting those nutrients to us, essentially by using animals as the middleman. Here's another chart comparing agricultural water use to domestic use and industrial use. As you can see, agriculture uses way more water than the other two. It's only projected to go up exponentially as developing nations continue to increase their wealth and eat more like we do. And here's another graphic that compares the plant. So 100 grams of plant protein, once it's fed to a cow, is only converted to 4 grams of animal protein. So it's extremely inefficient for getting the protein and the nutrients that people need to them via meat versus simply the plants. So I'm going to talk about plant-based meals and other alternatives that we can use to mitigate the global consumption. Obviously, the easiest way to do this would be to simply eat less meat and reduce our consumption daily. But if you don't want to do that, these are some alternatives for you. So pictured here is the Beyond Burger, and that is mostly chickpea based. That's the source of the protein. There's also some bean protein in there. And the fattiness of it comes from coconut oil and canola oil. And it's just a good plant-based alternative to a beef burger. It tastes pretty good. Dunkin' Donuts has a deal with them on their sausages. They have a Beyond Meat sausage patty at Dunkin's. I found it to be pretty good from what I tried. And pictured next to that is the Impossible Burger, which that varies pretty significantly from the Beyond Meat burger, because in 2015, Impossible Foods patented a process to synthesize the heme iron. If you remember from previous slide, the heme iron is what makes meat taste so good. And they're able to artificially synthesize that in a lab, add it to their chickpea-based burger as well, and that really gives it the fattiness and the flavor that you can't really find in any other source other than meat. And now there's an option for you. The Impossible Burger can be found at Burger King. I've tried the Impossible Whopper. I was very pleasantly surprised with it. So these are two very good alternatives. Beyond Meat went public in 2018, I believe. And yeah, both very good companies. And then there's another emerging market of cultured meat. And one example of this is Just Inc. There's about a dozen or so other startups globally. And essentially, this is the process of taking a cell culture from an animal, putting it in a nutrient-rich environment, and over time, it actually grows into essentially a slab of meat. They've done chicken nuggets, burgers, all sorts of stuff. And the cost right now for that is about $10 per burger, which is about 3 times more than your typical beef burger. But as technology continues to develop, the cost for that is only going to go down. Also, it uses 50% of the energy used to create the same beef burger, less than 3% of the land usage, 8% of the water use, and 10% of the greenhouse gas emissions. So as you can see, those are all hugely beneficial to reducing the environmental impact caused by cattle production and the industrialized meat process. And this is a nice chart to visualize that. As you can see, the tall dark bars are the energy and resource uses for standard beef, and the pink bars are the cell-based meat. As you can see, it's hugely less for all of them, especially land usage, which is especially beneficial when considering how much of our land is used to growing feed for the cattle rather than other crops that could be consumed by people. So this wraps up the presentation. So I'm going to leave you with this. The key to making a change, all of us have the power to do it. It's simply change your diet. Incorporate more of these meat-based alternatives. Give them a try at least. See if you like them. Like I said, the Impossible Whopper was very good. Also, just in general, reduce your daily meat consumption. It's not overly healthy for you in general, and the environmental impact is huge. All right, so thank you guys for listening, and that was my presentation.